Welcome. How to draw the anime eye. The first thing that we need to be doing is drawing a simple rectangle. This is going to give me an idea of where I'm going to place the eyes. We need to make sure that the eyes are the same size and distance apart, and this is going to help us with that. You can see I've divided it into 3 sections. The section in the middle is going to be the distance between the eyes, and it is roughly the same size as the other 2 boxes, maybe slightly narrower. We need to decide on the overall shape of the eye. Now there are lots of different shapes that anime eyes can take. I'm going to go for this kind of circular shape that is pointed at the corners. We're going to start with the simple shapes and then add all of the flashy details once that foundation is in place, because it's no good adding lots of pretty eyelashes and highlights if our basic shapes are wonky. So you can see me taking some measurements, just adjusting a little bit that eye shape on the right. I have a habit of making them different sizes, so I'm trying to correct for that. After that, we need to drop in the irises. Now the iris can touch the upper eyelid, it can touch the lower eyelid, it can touch both, it can touch neither. There is a variety of different ways to draw the anime eye depending on the character and the expression. I've gone for an oval that is just touching the upper eyelids, as you can see, and then added a little bit of thickness to the upper eyelid so that we've got a hint of the eyelashes. Well, these are our basic shapes. It's time to add in some details, and the first thing to put in is the pupil. I find it looks better with anime eyes to draw the pupil as an oval rather than a perfect circle. Then we're going to divide the entire iris roughly in half like so, and then add some thickness around the edge of the iris. You'll see on a realistic eye that you have this ring of darker shadow around the edge of your iris. When it comes to adding highlights, it can be good to use slightly different shapes. So most of my shapes have been very rounded so far, and for the highlights I'm using these more boxy shapes for the main highlight, in the top right hand corner at least. I like to have the highlight in that corner right up against the edge of the iris so that it sort of breaks the shape of the iris slightly. When we erase later, you'll see that it leaves a sort of indent in the iris. It just makes things feel a little more lively. I'm going to add some eyelashes next, and it's easy to just add a million different eyelashes all over the place, and if you do that it looks a bit strange. You need to be very deliberate with which eyelashes that you add. You can see I've added 4. It's hard exactly to say how you should place the eyelashes. It can be a little bit random in a sense. The main thing is that you just don't draw every single eyelash, and instead you find some sort of rhythm or pattern to it. Notice incidentally that I drew both of the eyes at the same time. That allows me to make sure that everything is fairly symmetrical. Alright, we've got the basics in for the eyes in terms of the drawing. It's time to add some shading, and for that I'm switching over to the colored black pencil, because one of the things about anime eyes is you really want a lot of contrast. You want those darks to be really quite dark. The first thing I'm going to be doing is shading in those thick eyelashes. Now, I don't think we want the whole thing to be the same tone. That can be quite uninteresting. Instead, I'm going to leave some strokes of lighter area and have some areas really, really dark. And that allows for a little bit of a sort of eyelash texture. The way that I'm achieving that is I'm doing my shading lines in the same direction as the shape of the eyelashes, as opposed to what I usually do, which is shade more or less straight up and down or from side to side. Pay attention to this corner here. I'm just going to start to gradually taper off the amount of tone that we have so that it gets lighter as we reach the bottom, only very subtly, but it's there. These kind of little details might seem pedantic, but anime eyes are all about subtlety, and all these little effects add up in the end to produce eyes that are more beautiful. Shading can be a little bit of a time-consuming process, and I'm not doing anything particularly different to what I've already explained, so I'm just going to kick up the speed slightly so that we aren't sat around all day waiting for me to shade things in, and I'll be back shortly with a little more advice. Alright, well you can see all I've really done is finished shading in those eyelashes and shaded in the ring around the iris. The next thing is to shade in the pupil, and for that I'm using a cross-hatching technique where I shade first, straight up and down, only up and down lines, and then I go back in at a 45-degree angle and shade in with diagonal lines. And then I gradually add layers of hatching in different directions to build up that crisp black tone. One thing that I didn't add when we did the drawing was this little detail inside of the iris. If you look inside of a realistic eye, you often find these kind of, I don't know what to call them, scribbles. Well, anyway, we're going to return to the upper part of the iris that we segmented out before and just use that hatching technique again to shade in everything. If you didn't get a good look at my hatching technique with the pupil, you can get a much better look at it when I shade in the iris here. I want the upper part of the iris to be quite dark compared to the lower section, which we're going to leave white. We are actually very nearing the end of the shading portion of this eye. We're just putting in the eyebrows and some eyelashes. This is an important shadow here. The shadow that the eyelashes cast over the eyeball helps to make things feel more three-dimensional. And with that, it's time to just erase the guidelines and prepare to move on to the second eye. I'm going to add a little bit of an extra flourish to my eye using the eraser, and that's to erase and remove some of the black colored pencil from the bottom part of the iris, just to make it feel like it's kind of fading away in the light at the bottom there. It's a very subtle effect, and it can actually take quite a bit of effort to remove colored pencil after you've put it in, but just a little bit makes quite a difference. Okay, we're done with this now. I'm just going to go ahead and repeat that same process over on the left-hand side, trying my best to make sure that everything is essentially the same. I don't think everybody wants to sit and watch me do that again at this speed, so I'm going to whiz through that in time-lapse and then come back in at the end for some final comments. But just quickly before we do that, I'm going to whip out something that's going to help me with this drawing, because what I should have done is drawn the left eye first and then drawn the right eye, because drawing the right eye first means that because I'm right-handed, I now have to lean on the right eye as I draw the left eye, and that could create lots of smudges. My solution is to use this envelope here, or any piece of paper really, just to cover up the drawing so that I'm not leaning directly on it. But yeah, okay, I'll see you once this eye is done. Alright, so all I've done is employed those same techniques that you saw with the first eye, and I've employed them over on the left eye as well. And that about completes my drawing of anime eyes. I thought I'd zoom out so that you could see the full effect. I often find that these things look better zoomed out than they do zoomed in. Thanks so much for sitting down and drawing with me today. I hope you learned a thing or two about drawing. If you want to see my personal art, you can see that over on YouTube Shorts. If not, I'll see you next time for another drawing lesson. Have a nice day, folks.